everyone, welcome back. I'm glad you're here, and here we are at church again. We sure do miss you at the regular church. Now someday we're going to be back at church, but until then just keep watching us here online. So we're going to do pretty much the same thing that we've done before. We're going to start with some songs. Then I'm going to teach you a little prayer today because our lesson is about prayer. And then what we're going to do is get into the Bible lesson and see what happens to Daniel today. All right, are you ready for some songs? All right, let's sing.
Aloha, it's your teacher, Miss Joanna, and you know what time it is. It is singing time! I have an important announcement to make. It is Madison's birthday! We are going to sing a birthday song for her, so let's begin. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Madison. Happy birthday to you. The first song is called What a Mighty God We Serve. A lot of you know the hand motions, so you can go ahead and do the hand motion. If you don't know the hand motions, you can go ahead and start by clapping like this. Your parents can help you to do this clapping motion. You have to clap at the beat of the ukulele, okay? So it might be a little bit tricky knowing that you don't have your teacher there to help you, but your parents can help you. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him, heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him, heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. This next song is called This Is the Day. It's very simple and you'll have the lyrics up on the screen. You can go ahead and clap along with me again. It goes like this. Is a really simple song. It is one of my favorites. It is called God is So Good. We are going to sing it 3 times in 3 different ways. God is so good, He loves me so, and Christ died for me. Are you ready? Let's begin. God is so good. God is so good. So good to me. He loves me so. He loves me so. He loves me so.
welcome back. Hey, so since our lesson's about prayer today, and I know sometimes you might pray at home, you might pray before a meal, you might pray before you go to bed. But this prayer today that I'm going to teach you is one that you can pray first thing in the morning. All right? So I'm going to go through it. I'll say it slow and you repeat after me. Okay? Help me, dear Lord, be brave and strong to choose what's right instead of wrong. In all the things I do and say, may I please you in every way. All right? You guys got it? We'll say it a little bit faster this time. Help me, dear Lord, be brave and strong to choose what's right instead of wrong. In all the things that I do and say, may I please you in every way. All right, good job. We're going to do it one more time. Help me, dear Lord, be brave and strong to choose what's right instead of wrong. In all the things I do and say, may I please you in every way. You see, Daniel prayed often. He prayed 3 times every day. This is a little prayer that you can say first thing in the morning. All right? So, now let's kind of review a little bit. Daniel, if you remember, and his 3 friends were just young boys when the soldiers came and they took them captive. They took them back and they were going to train them to be part of the king's army. And Daniel's parents taught him to obey God. And so through his whole life, that's all he wanted to do was please God by obeying him. And if you remember, the servant brought in the finest meat of the land for the boys to eat. But Daniel and his 3 friends, he purposed in their heart that they would not disobey God. And so Daniel asked the servant if he and his friends could have vegetables instead of the meat, and if they could have water instead of the wine. Now the servant was a little bit afraid because he thought, if I don't feed you guys, you're not going to be healthy and I'm going to get in trouble. Daniel says, don't worry about that. He says, my God can fix it. If you just test us for 10 days, then you can see. If we're not stronger in 10 days, then you can bring the meat back. But the meat was sacrificed to idols. And that's one rule that God has. Do not eat meat that has been sacrificed to idols. So Daniel had prayed, and he asked God to help him. And so for 10 days, the servant only brought them vegetables and water. And you know what? After 10 days, they were stronger, they were healthier, their hair was shinier, they were better than everyone else. And so they were selected to be in the king's army, and they were selected to be counselors. They were high up. Then we talked about Daniel's 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now if you remember them, they were also trained to obey God. And the king made a big statue. And he said, as soon as the music plays, everyone should bow down and worship the statue that looks like the king. But if you remember, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's another rule that God has. We should not worship anyone else but him. And so they said, King, we cannot worship this statue. It's against the rules of our God. And it made the king mad, right? And do you remember what he did? He turned the furnace up 7 times hotter, and he threw the 3 people, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, into the fiery furnace. And then pretty soon the king started to look, and he said, "Didn't we only throw 3 into the furnace?" "Yes, king, we only threw 3 in." He says, "I see 4 men walking around in the furnace, and the 4th one looks like the Son of God." So the king got closer, and he yelled into the furnace, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, you come out here right now." So they came out of the furnace, and the king was so impressed that God had saved these guys. Their hair wasn't burnt, their clothes weren't burnt, they didn't even smell like smoke. And yet it was so hot that the guys that threw them in the furnace, they died. So God protected Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And that made the king think. So the king made a new rule. He says, no longer do you have to bow down and worship me and my statue, but you need to worship Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God, for he can truly save people. So now, it's many, many, many years later, and Daniel is about 80 years old. Okay? So he's not a boy anymore, and he's not even a young man. He's an old man. But he had a habit of praying to God every day, 3 times a day, morning, noon, and at night. And there was a new king in the palace. And the new king selected 120 princes to help run his whole kingdom. Now, and then he put 3 presidents in charge of those 120 princes. Daniel was one of them. That the new king trusted Daniel because he was always faithful. He was a hard worker. He did what he was supposed to do, and he didn't do what he wasn't supposed to do. The other 2 presidents didn't like it. They said, Daniel's not even from this country. He shouldn't even be in charge around here. But the king trusted Daniel so much that he put him in charge of the other 2 presidents. So he was in charge of the whole kingdom. No one was more important than Daniel except for the king. So the 2 other presidents, they didn't like Daniel at all, and they wanted to come up with a plan. So they watched Daniel. For days they watched him to try to find something that Daniel did wrong. But Daniel didn't do anything wrong. He just prayed every day to his God. And then they started to think, hey, what if we make a new law that says you can only pray to the king? And then when Daniel prays to his God, he'll be breaking the law. Now, can you imagine a law that says you cannot pray to God? That's silly. But that's exactly what these 2 did. They came before the king, and here's what they did. They said, "O king," they talked to him really nice, and they made it sound like it was all his idea. They said, we've talked to all the other kings, we've talked to the other people in the kingdom, all the governors and princes, and we've decided to bring this law to you for signature. And what the law says is that no one can pray to anyone but you for 30 days. Well, the king liked the law, so he signed it. And once the king signs the law, there's no changing it. Now Daniel knew that the king had signed the law. But here's what happened. They went out and announced it anyway. They got their big scroll out, and they said, hear ye, for the next 30 days, no one is to pray or ask anyone or anything unless they ask the king. And anyone who breaks this rule will be thrown into the den of lions. And it's signed by the great King Darius. So Daniel knew when they had made that announcement, he heard it. And he knew that if he prayed to God, it would be against the law. What do you think Daniel did? Remember our verses from before? It's better to obey God than man. And Daniel didn't change at all. For over 80 years, he's been praying to God. And I don't think he could stop. So he did the same thing again. Okay? He went to his house. He got right in front of his window. And he prayed. Now notice that the window's open. He could have closed the doors, he could have closed the windows, and he prayed to God, and no one would even know. But he did what he's always done before. He knelt down before the window, and he prayed to the one true God. Now, because the window was open, everyone could see. And they could see that Daniel was praying. And they could see that he wasn't praying to the king. And if you see in the background, those are the two other presidents. And they said, we got him. Daniel has broken the law. And so they went to the king. They said, oh, dear king, live forever. We have just found Daniel praying to someone other than you. And do you remember the law that you signed? It says if you pray to anyone other than you, then you, as the king, must throw them into the lion's den. Now the king had a choice. Would he throw Daniel in? He was a good friend. He liked Daniel. Well, you're just going to have to wait till next week to find out what happens to Daniel. All right? So let's practice our verse. The Lord heareth the prayers of the righteous. All right, I'll say it again. The Lord heareth the prayers of the righteous. Proverbs 15:29. All right, so you repeat after me. The Lord heareth the prayers of the righteous. Proverbs 15:29. All right, one more time. The Lord hears the prayers of the righteous. Proverbs 15:29. All right, so I want you to look at these pictures. There's 4 pictures of people praying, of kids praying. So what do you think they're doing in the first one? They're at a picnic table. I bet they're praying for their food before they eat. This next one, they're probably at an activity at church. And they're playing games. I bet they're praying to keep everybody safe. And I bet they're thanking God for allowing them to come to church. The next 3 kids, I think they're praising God. They're thanking Him that they can go to church. They're thanking Him for the sunshine that they have. They're thanking Him for their health and that they're not sick. Okay? And the last picture shows someone praying when? At night. She's praying before she goes to bed. So just like Daniel, he prayed 3 times a day. Morning, noon, and at night. And I bet she's asking for God to keep her safe while she sleeps. Now, do you remember the prayer that we worked on earlier. Let's go over that one more time. Help me, dear Lord, be brave and strong, to choose what's right instead of wrong. In all the things I do and say, may I please you in every way. All right, guys, I want you to keep practicing your verse, and then, okay, you can send me an email just to tell me that you're working on your verse or that you like the activities that we've been doing. All right, I look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully we can get to see each other soon. Thanks, and take care. Goodbye.